Today we're going to be reading a book called Growing Trees, written by Judith Stamper, illustrated by Wesley Lowe. This is a picture of my tree and me. We've been growing up together for a whole year. It all began last summer. I went to visit a national forest with my mom and dad. A forest is a great place to learn about trees. There are trees as far as you can see. We took a hike with a forester, an expert on taking care of trees in the wild. The forester showed us small, young trees and big, old trees that were like towering giants. Wow, look at those trees, everybody. And remember, it just told us the name of somebody who takes care of trees. They're called a forester. Then he explained the life cycle of a tree. It all starts out with a seed it all starts out with a seed. In the spring, the warm sun makes the seed germinate or begin to grow. You guys look at that new word, germinate. What does that mean? To begin to grow. The seed sprouts a small root that grows down into the ground. The root absorbs water and minerals from the soil. So look at that, guys. It starts out as a seed. See the roots? Then it becomes a seed cast. Then it has the stem. That's pretty cool, huh? Next, a small stem pushes up out of the ground and grows two tiny seed leaves. The leaves use sunlight to give the trees energy to grow. A new growth called a shoot appears at the tip of the stem. Larger leaves grow from the shoot. The seedling is on its way to becoming a tree. Wow, that is so cool, guys. So who would have ever thought that a tree grows from a tiny seed? The young tree keeps growing if it gets enough water and sunlight to survive. In its next year of life, the tree grows buds that may turn into leaves. Soon the leaves has branches, a woody trunk, bark, and lots of leaves. Each year, the tree grows taller and its trunk gets wider. A forester can tell how a tree is by counting its rings, how old the tree is by counting its rings. A tree trunk has one ring for each year it's been alive. This tree was more than 100 years old. So if it's more than 100 years old, you guys see those rings on it? And remember they said each little ring counts as 1 year that they've been alive. So this tree has been alive for 100 years. So that means it has how many rings? 100 rings. A forester can also find out how old a living tree is by using a tree borer, a tool that takes out a small part of the tree without hurting it. Look at that, guys. Isn't that cool? They can use that to determine how old a tree is. That's pretty cool. So you can, how many ways can you determine how old the tree is? You can use the borer tool, which will take out a piece of the tree to be able to tell, or you can count the rings on the tree. After our trip to the forest, I wanted to grow a tree of my own. Dad took me to a nursery where you can buy flowers, shrubs, and trees. A nursery has trees that have grown big enough to transplant or plant in a new place. The nursery worker showed me trees that have flowers in the spring and fruit in the summer. We looked at trees with soft leaves and trees with pine needles. That's pretty cool, guys. I chose a maple tree. My tree was already more than 4 feet high, just a little taller than me. The nursery worker helped us choose a shovel to plant the tree. She recommended organic fertilizer to feed the tree as it grew. Then she went over the instructions on how to plant my tree. I picked out a place in our backyard where the tree would have lots of sunlight and lots of room to grow. Then Dad and I dug a hole with the shovel. The hole was as deep as the tree's root ball and about 3 times as wide. So now they're getting ready to plant the tree. We carefully lowered the tree into the hole. We loosened the burlap bag around the roots. Next, we filled in soil around the tree. I added organic fertilizer to the soil and sprinkled mulch on top. Then I gave my tree a nice drink of water. She's taking care of her tree. She's doing great. Dad asked an arborist to check the other trees in our yard. An arborist is like a doctor for trees. She pruned the branches of our big trees with pruning shears. So that's another person that takes care of trees, guys. Remember, the first person was a forester. Now we have an arborist. She checked all the trees for signs of disease. She also listened for bugs by using a stethoscope. She looked like a doctor. One of our oldest trees had been damaged by a storm. The arborist used a handsaw and a chainsaw to cut off broken limbs. Look at that. Does that remind you of something that the doctor has? And remember, they said she used the stethoscope to listen for bugs. That is so cool. I called the arborist to check my tree. She said it was doing just fine. She added a stake to help it grow up straight. So you guys see this? This is called a stake, and they add those to trees to help them grow up to be straight versus crooked. You don't want your tree to be like this, right? You want it to be like this. So you put this around it called a stake. When the weather turned cold, my tree's leaves turned bright red. Then they twirled down to the ground. Wow, so look at that, guys. Her tree started off green, right? But then when it got cold outside, it turned red. The next spring, my tree grew buds that turned into leaves. Over the summer, it grew branches with more leaves. Its trunk grew thicker. Close up of red maple branch with buds on the spring. So you see that, guys? That's what her tree, they started to develop little buds. That's pretty neat. This is a leaf from my red maple tree. It has 3 lobes that have saw-toothed edges. Stem, lobe. Okay, so these are the parts of the leaf, guys. Here's the stem. Here's the lobe. Bark and ridges. The bark is dark gray and rough with little ridges. And you guys know every tree has bark on it. So if you guys look outside, look at a tree, you'll see the bark and you'll see the ridges. All summer, I watered my tree and checked it for insects. It just kept growing. The arborist said that my tree could grow 60 feet high. That's taller than my house. Look at my tree now. It's so much taller than I am. If I take good care of it, it will be around for a long time. A tree is a great friend to grow up with. You can plant a tree too. Which one would you choose? The